The Forbidden Cup. The chamber was silent except for the slow drip of water falling from the ceiling. Strange blue flames burned in tall, alien braziers, throwing long shadows across the carved stone walls. Ancient symbols glowed faintly, as if they were alive, whispering secrets too old for anyone to understand. At the center of the hall stood a pedestal, and upon it rested the object that had brought them all here, the Cup of the Forgotten. Around the pedestal, alien council members stood in their dark robes, their strange eyes fixed on the human who had dared to walk into their sacred chamber. The tallest one raised his thin, clawed hand, and his voice echoed like metal scraping on stone. Once you drink from it, humanity is lost forever. Human, do not touch what was never meant for your kind. But the human did not stop. His boots echoed against the floor, each step louder than the last. Dust rose as he walked, and the blue fire reflected in his eyes. His name was Captain Jareth Cole, and unlike the aliens, his face did not show fear. The council hissed, their voices blending together like a storm. No one has ever returned from the cup. Even our strongest champions vanished into madness. Do you wish to join them? Still, the human said nothing. His silence was heavier than words, his calm more terrifying than threats. One young alien whispered to another, "Why does he not tremble? Does he not understand?" The elder replied, "Perhaps that is why he is dangerous. Humans never understand when to fear." Jareth reached the pedestal. The cup was strange, carved from black crystal, shimmering with a red liquid that pulsed as though it had a heartbeat of its own. It seemed alive, breathing, waiting for the one who dared. The council leader spoke again. "This is the cup of erasure, human. To drink from it is to give up all that makes you what you are. Your mind, your soul, your humanity. Gone. What remains is not you, but a shadow that obeys no law of flesh or spirit." His voice dropped lower, almost a warning. "Do not test it. The galaxy has already seen too much death." But Jareth's hand did not shake as he reached for the cup. He remembered the wars on Earth, the flames consuming cities, the screams of the innocent. He remembered the promise he made to himself, that he would not bend, not even to gods. And now, standing before the most feared relic in alien history, he felt the same fire in his chest. He lifted the cup. Its weight was heavier than stone, and yet he held it firm. The red liquid rippled as though sensing his touch, and the chamber seemed to lean closer, listening. The aliens stepped back, some shielding their eyes, others whispering prayers to gods that had long abandoned them. Still, Jareth spoke for the first time, his voice steady. "You say humanity will be lost forever if I drink, but humanity is not so weak. We endure, we rise, we fight." And with that, he raised the cup to his lips. The first drop touched his tongue like fire and ice. Together, it burned, but it also froze, spreading through his veins like living lightning. The symbols on the walls flared bright, glowing so fiercely that the chamber looked as if it was lit by a dying sun. The ground trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. The aliens cried out, "He is doomed! Stop him!" But none dared move closer. A force, invisible yet crushing, radiated from Jareth's body. Pushing them back, Jareth's vision blurred, but inside the fire there was clarity. He saw flashes, Earth's oceans, the stars above, the faces of his people. Every memory, every emotion, every pain and triumph of humanity surged within him. The cup was not trying to erase him. It was trying to see if he was strong enough to hold on. The liquid poured down his throat. His heartbeat thundered, louder than the chamber's silence, louder than the council's cries. The flames bent toward him as if bowing. The cup glowed so brightly it cracked, and shards of crystal floated in the air like sparks. But Jareth did not fall. He placed the empty cup back on the pedestal, its pieces still burning with red light. And when he turned to face the council, his eyes were no longer the same. They blazed with a light not of this world, but behind it all, something unmistakable remained: his humanity. The aliens froze, their bodies trembling, their voices silenced. The silence broke when the council leader whispered, "It is Impossible, he still stands. He should have been erased. He should have been nothing. But Jareth only stepped forward, his voice echoing in the hall. I told you, humanity is not so easy to erase. The chamber shook once more, as if the universe itself had heard his words. And so the legend of the Forbidden Cup began, with a human who dared to drink without fear. The first transformation. The moment the last drop of the red liquid left the cup, silence filled the chamber. Every alien eye was fixed on the human, their breath shallow, their hands trembling. For thousands of years, the cup had only brought madness, death, or disappearance. But now, for the first time, someone stood alive after drinking it. Jareth's chest rose and fell heavily. His eyes glowed faintly, shifting between human brown and a strange golden light. The veins on his arms lit up like molten lines, pulsing with the same rhythm as the broken cup. Each beat of his heart sounded like a drum echoing in the chamber walls. The young alien who had spoken earlier gasped, "He is changing. The cup is inside him." The elder council member hissed, "No, the cup is resisting him. His humanity will not last." Jareth felt it too. Inside his mind, there was a storm. Whispers filled the darkness. Voices in languages he had never heard. Images of worlds destroyed, of beings greater than empires. The cup was showing him memories older than time itself. He staggered for a moment, gripping his head. The voices pressed against his mind like claws, tearing at his thoughts. But he refused to bow. He remembered his promise, the promise not to lose what made him human. His vision blurred, and then he saw it, a massive figure standing before him. Tall and faceless, made of shifting stars and shadows, its voice echoed in his skull. "You should not exist, human. This gift is not for your kind. You will be erased." Jareth clenched his fists. His voice was low but steady. "You call it a gift, but to me it is a test, and I don't fail tests." The figure roared, and suddenly his body burned. His skin rippled with energy, glowing symbols spreading across his arms and chest. The aliens stepped back as the chamber shook again. Blue fire bent and twisted, bowing toward Jareth as if recognizing him. The council leader shouted, "Stop this before it destroys us all." He cannot hold it. But no one moved. Fear froze them in place. Jareth fell to one knee, his teeth clenched as the power surged. The ground cracked beneath him, lines of light spreading outward like rivers of fire. He pressed his hand to the stone floor, and the symbols there responded, glowing brighter, awakening something buried deep beneath the chamber. Suddenly, the whispers in his head grew louder. He saw entire civilizations, millions of voices crying out. Some begged for mercy, others screamed in pain. It was overwhelming, but then within the chaos, one memory rose above all: Earth. He saw his mother's face, her smile before he left for war. He saw the children who ran through ruined streets still laughing despite hunger. He saw the soldiers who fought beside him, dying but unbroken. That was humanity. Not perfect, not pure but unyielding. Jareth's eyes snapped open and he roared back at the voices. "You will not take this from me. I am still human." The faceless figure shattered like broken glass. The storm inside his mind faded into a strange calm, and when the light in his veins settled, it no longer looked alien. It pulsed in rhythm with his human heartbeat. The aliens gasped. He controlled it. No one has ever done this. This should be impossible. Jareth rose slowly to his feet. The golden glow in his eyes dimmed, leaving behind the fierce human gaze. But something was different. Every movement, every breath, carried a weight of power. The cup had not erased him. It had merged with him. The Kyo. Council leader pointed a trembling claw at him. "You are not human anymore. You are something else, something dangerous." Jareth looked at him calmly and replied, "I am still human, but now I carry what you fear." The pedestal cracked. The broken pieces of the cup floated upward as if weightless. They circled Jareth slowly, glowing brighter before dissolving. Into dust. That dust sank into his skin, vanishing completely. The cup was gone. Its power was now inside him. The chamber doors groaned open on their own. A deep rumble shook the walls, and distant machinery began to awaken. The aliens looked around in panic, The cup has awakened the guardians. We are doomed. From the shadows at the far end of the hall, giant stone figures began to move. Their eyes glowed red, their heavy steps echoing like thunder. For centuries they had been asleep, waiting for the one who dared drink from the cup. And now they had awoken. For Jareth. The human turned to face them, his body still glowing faintly. The aliens shouted at him to flee, to escape before the guardians crushed him. But Jareth only squared his shoulders. He felt the power burning inside him, not destroying, but strengthening. The test was not over. This was only the beginning. As the guardians marched closer, the alien council realized the truth. The cup had chosen, and it had chosen a human. The aliens' fear. The guardians' footsteps shook the chamber like falling mountains. Each step cracked the stone floor, and dust rained down from the ceiling. Their eyes burned red, and their massive stone hands clenched as if ready to crush anything that stood in their way. The alien council huddled together, their robes trembling as much as their bodies. They have awoken. The guardians only rise when the cup's curse is released, one whispered. Another added in a broken voice, "This is the end. We warned the human. We begged him not to drink. Now we will all be destroyed." But their words died when they saw Jareth. The human did not cower. He stood firm, his eyes glowing faintly gold, the same color that had frightened them before. The guardians moved closer, but Jareth did not take a single step back. One young council member trembled. He is not afraid. Doesn't he understand what they are?" The elder beside him replied in a low voice, "That is why he is dangerous. Humans fear differently. They face what we would run from." The guardians raised their massive arms. Energy hummed in the air, a sound older than stars. The aliens braced themselves, believing they were about to be crushed. But something strange happened. The guardians froze. Their red eyes shifted to gold, mirroring the light inside Jareth. And slowly, as if recognizing him, they lowered their arms. The chamber went silent again. The council gasped. They obey him? No, that cannot be. He is only flesh, he cannot command them. Yet the proof stood before them. Stone giants bowing to a single human. Jareth glanced at the guardians but said nothing. His body still burned with power. But inside his mind, he could feel it. The cup had not only tested him, it had given him a link, a connection to forces that even the aliens no longer controlled. The council leader hissed, trying to hide his fear. This is unnatural. The cup was never meant for his kind. He will bring ruin to all of us. But his voice shook and his claws tapped nervously against the stone. Even he could not deny the truth. Jareth was no longer someone they could command. Jareth finally spoke, his tone calm but sharp as steel. You warned me that humanity would be lost. Yet I stand here still human, stronger than before. He gestured toward the guardians, who stood still like statues awaiting his command. Maybe the cup was waiting for someone who would not bow. The young alien dared to step forward, his voice uncertain. But why you? Why a human? Jareth met his gaze, his expression firm. Because humanity doesn't quit. We don't bend to fear. And when we fall, we rise again. The council murmured among themselves, their fear growing. If the guardians obeyed this human, then their own power meant nothing. For generations they had ruled by claiming the cup's curse. Now their greatest weapon had chosen someone else. An outsider. One of the council members hissed. He will not control it for long. The cup always takes its price. He will lose his humanity soon, and when he does, we will strike. But another alien, older and wiser, shook his head. No, look at him. The power bends to his will. He bends to nothing. Fear spread like wildfire among them. Some wanted to attack Jareth now before his strength grew further. Others wanted to flee, to escape before the guardians crushed them all, but none dared move. Meanwhile, Jareth's mind burned with visions again. He saw stars collapsing, galaxies, consumed by fire. He felt the cup's history, the countless beings who had tried to master it and failed. Each one lost their identity, their soul swallowed by the voices. But he was different. Every time the darkness tried to pull him apart, he clung tighter to his humanity. His memories were his anchor, his shield. The guardians stepped aside, clearing a path deeper into the ancient ruins. The chamber doors beyond them glowed faintly. As if waiting for Jareth to enter, the council panicked. If he goes through, he will awaken what lies beyond. We cannot allow this. But their fear chained them to the spot. Jareth looked back at them one last time. His voice carried both warning and promise. You fear me because I drank what you never could. You fear me because I did not break. But remember this. I am not your enemy unless you make me one. With that, he stepped forward. The guardians followed behind like silent shadows. The doors opened without a touch, revealing a vast darkness filled with the hum of sleeping machines. The council stared, trembling. For the first time in centuries, they were powerless. And their greatest fear was no longer the cup. It was the human who had claimed it. The leader of the council finally whispered the thought that weighed on all of them. If one human can do this, what will happen when the rest of his kind learns? The truth? Memories of Earth. The doors closed behind Jareth with a heavy rumble, sealing him inside the deeper chamber. The air was colder here, sharp and heavy, as if it had not been breathed for centuries. Strange machines lined the walls, tall and silent, their surfaces etched with glowing runes. The guardians followed him like silent statues, their massive steps shaking the floor. But the silence did not last. Whispers began again, not from the cup, but from the chamber itself. The runes pulsed, faintly, and the air shimmered like water. Then the darkness around Jareth twisted into light. He blinked, and suddenly he was no longer in the alien ruins. He was standing in a place he knew all too well. Earth. The ruined streets of his home city stretched before him. Broken buildings, smoke in the air, and the sound of distant screams. It was the war that had taken everything from him. Jareth clenched his fists. This isn't real, he muttered, his voice echoing against the empty streets. But the smell of ash was real, the heat of burning fires was real, and the faces he saw were real too, faces he had promised never to forget. Children ran across the rubble, their laughter hiding fear. Soldiers fought in the distance, their cries echoing through the smoke. And there, in the middle of it all, stood his mother. Her kind smile exactly as he remembered. Jareth's chest tightened. He had watched her die years ago. And yet here she was. She reached out to him, her voice soft. Jareth, you don't have to fight anymore. You can let go. You can rest. His knees almost gave way. Every part of him wanted to run to her, to hold her hand. But something deep inside whispered a warning. This was not her. It was the cup, the chamber, the test. It wanted him to surrender, to let go of his humanity. He shook his head slowly, his voice rough. You are not her. You are a memory, and I will not give in to shadows. The vision flickered. His mother's face twisted, shifting into the faceless figure from before. You resist still, human, it said, its voice like 1,000 whispers. But memories are the chains of and they will break you. The world around him changed again. He stood on a battlefield, his squad beside him. He could hear their laughter, their voices calling his name. They were alive here, though he knew the truth. They had all died, every one of them, except him. One soldier clapped his shoulder. Captain, we've got your back. You don't have to carry this alone. Another grinned. We'll fight forever together. The temptation hit him harder than any weapon ever had. To see them alive, to fight with them again, to believe that none of the deaths were real. It would be so easy to stay in this memory, to forget the pain, to forget the truth. But Jareth clenched his fists tighter. He forced himself to look into their faces. You're not real, he said quietly. You died fighting, and I carry your memory. That is enough. The soldiers' smiles faded, their bodies turning into smoke that drifted away into the burning sky. The battlefield cracked and collapsed, leaving him standing once more in the glowing alien chamber. The runes blazed brighter now, the walls humming with energy. The faceless figure appeared again, towering above him. You cling to pain as though it is strength. Why? You could let go. You could be more than human, eternal, endless. Jareth's voice cut through the chamber, steady and unyielding. No. Without my memories, without my people, I am nothing. Humanity is not weakness. It is the reason I stand. It is the reason I fight. The chamber shook violently, the machines groaning as if straining against his words. The guardians shifted behind him, lowering to one knee, their glowing eyes locked on him. Even they seemed to recognize his strength. The faceless figure hissed, "You will regret this. Defiance, human. You will regret clinging to a dying world." But its voice was thinner now, weaker, as though Jareth's resistance was tearing it apart. Jareth stepped forward. "Maybe my world is broken, maybe my people bleed, but we rise, we endure, and no curse, no test, no power in the stars will erase that." The figure shattered into shards of light, exploding into the chamber walls. The runes on the machines blazed brighter than ever, then dimmed, leaving only silence. The whispers were gone. Only Jareth remained, breathing hard but unbroken. The guardians rose again, their massive forms looming like shadows of mountains. But, this time, their glowing eyes held no threat, only recognition. They turned toward the far end of the chamber where a new door began to glow. A path deeper still, Jareth glanced at the council, who still stood frozen at the first doorway, their faces pale with fear and awe. He knew what they had seen. A human who refused to lose himself even when offered eternity. A human who had proven that memories, even painful ones, were not chains but strength. He turned toward the glowing door, his voice steady. "If this was only the beginning, then let's finish it." And with the guardians behind him, he walked into the next test. Power unleashed, the door opened with a thunderous groan, and Jareth stepped into the next chamber. The air here felt alive, humming with raw energy. The walls were carved with immense circuits of light, running like rivers across stone and metal. Machines older than memory slept here. Towering like mountains in the shadows, the guardians entered behind him, their massive forms glowing faintly. They did not threaten him anymore. They followed as if sworn to his command. Their heavy footsteps echoed, and each echo made the ground tremble. Jareth's eyes swept across the chamber. He could feel it in his chest, the cup's power pulling, whispering, urging him forward. The runes on the walls responded to his heartbeat, pulsing in rhythm with his veins. Every step he took lit another section of the floor. The chamber itself seemed to awaken at his presence. The alien council stood, far back, their voices filled with fear. "He is activating the core," one whispered. "No, it cannot be. The machines were sealed before our ancestors were born." Another's voice trembled. "If he wakes them fully, the galaxy itself will tremble." But Jareth did not stop. He reached the center of the chamber where a massive platform stood. Above it floated a sphere of light caged by metallic arms, humming faintly as though waiting for a command. The cup's power inside him resonated with the sphere. He felt the connection deep in his bones. The faceless figure's voice returned, but weaker, broken. "You dare to claim what even gods feared? You are nothing but flesh and dust. You cannot wield it." Jareth raised his chin, his voice steady. "Maybe I am flesh and dust, but flesh remembers. Flesh fights. Flesh endures. And that is more than your silence ever gave." The platform flared to life. Energy arced across the sphere, slamming into Jareth's chest. The blast should have killed him instantly, yet it did not. Instead, the energy bent around him, swallowed by the power already burning inside. The cup's essence merged with the core's awakening. Jareth staggered, his vision blurring. Symbols etched themselves across his skin, glowing brighter with each heartbeat. His body felt as if it would tear apart. But with every breath, he forced the power to obey. He clenched his fists, shouting against the storm inside him. "I am still human. You will not take that from me." The machines roared to life. Pillars of light shot upward, filling the chamber with blinding brilliance. The guardians knelt as if in reverence. The council screamed, their fear echoing. "He commands the core. It is impossible. No being has done this since the First Empire." Jareth's eyes opened wide, glowing gold like twin suns. The energy no longer fought him. It flowed through him, obeying him. His voice thundered as he raised his hand. Bolts of light crackled across the chamber, bending to his will. The ground shook, the very walls humming with his heartbeat. The faceless figure screamed in fury. You cannot control it forever. Power consumes, and it will consume you. But Jareth only smirked through the storm. Then let it try. With a roar, he slammed his hand into the platform. The surge of energy exploded outward. Machines that had been silent for eons awakened. Great engines lit, their cores glowing like newborn stars. The chamber walls shifted, revealing vast tunnels filled with ancient weaponry. The ground above shook as towers rose, breaking the surface. The sky itself lit with alien fire. The council fell to their knees. They had ruled by fear of the cup, but now their power meant nothing. The human had not only survived, he commanded what they had lost. One whispered in horror, "He has become the weapon." Another answered, trembling, "No, he has become something more." Jareth stood in the middle of the storm. His body glowed with the merged strength of man and machine, but his eyes, sharp and human, never lost focus. He looked up at the rising machines and said softly, "This is not yours anymore, it's mine now." The guardians rose, moving to his side. Their massive frames bowed as though they had found their master. The chamber itself pulsed like a living heart. It was no longer a ruin, it was an arsenal, and Jareth was its core. But deep inside, he knew this was not the end. The cup had given him power, yes, but every gift came with a price. His humanity was still his shield, but how long could it hold against such force? The faceless voice whispered one last time, faint and cold. "You believe yourself strong, human, but every light burns out, and when you fall, your people will follow." Jareth clenched his fists, his voice like steel. "Then I'll burn, bright enough that they will never forget, even if it kills me." The machines answered with a thunderous roar. The galaxy had a new legend, a human who drank the cup, a human who unleashed the power of forgotten gods, and a human who refused to bow. Humanity's answer. The storm of light faded slowly. The great machines that Jareth had awakened now hummed like titans breathing in the dark. The guardians stood, tall beside him, their glowing eyes locked on the human who had become their chosen. The alien council still cowered at the far end of the chamber, their robes shaking, their eyes wide with terror. For centuries they had declared themselves keepers of the cup. They had ruled through fear of its curse. But now, before them stood a single human who had taken what they worshipped and turned it into his strength. The council leader's voice trembled. "You are no longer a man. You are something else. Something the galaxy should fear." Jareth turned toward him slowly, his eyes still glowing faint gold. "I am still a man," he said firmly, his voice carrying through the chamber like a drumbeat. "Humanity does not vanish so easily." The words struck the council harder than any weapon. They hissed among themselves, desperate to find an answer. One shouted, "You will destroy us all. The power inside you will consume worlds." Another spat. "You should never have been allowed near the cup." But Jareth did not shout back. His calm silence weighed heavier than their cries. He took a single step forward and the floor lit beneath his boots. The guardians followed, their massive shadows stretching across the trembling council. "I didn't come here to destroy you," Jareth said at last. "You speak of fear, of curses, of doom, but humanity is not built on fear." He raised his hand, and arcs of light danced harmlessly across his fingers. "Humanity is built on struggle. We fall, but we rise again, and when we bleed, we do not vanish. We remember, and we fight harder." The young council member who had watched in silence whispered, He speaks not as a conqueror but as a voice for his kind." The council leader hissed, "You speak of humanity as if it means anything here. You are one man, alone, far from your dying world." But Jareth only shook his head. "No, I am not alone. When I stand here, I carry every memory, every scar, every soul of my people. Humanity is with me." His words echoed against the stone walls. Even the great machines seemed to pulse brighter, responding to the conviction in his voice. The council faltered, their anger crumbling into unease. For the first time in centuries, they felt powerless, not because of his strength, but because of his unshaken will. The leader tried once more, his voice strained. "The cup changes all. Who touch it, you will become something monstrous. Humanity cannot survive inside you." Jareth's reply was sharp as a blade. "Then let the galaxy see what a monster built from humanity looks like. They will see that even with power beyond measure, I do not forget who I am." The Guardians slammed their fists into the ground. In unison, the sound like thunder. The machines roared as though they agreed. The council recoiled, their fear growing. They had seen empires rise and fall, but never had they seen one human bend the will of ancient power without losing himself. Jareth stepped closer to them, his gaze unflinching. "You fear me because I am proof that your rules are lies. You told your people the cup erased identity, but here I stand more human than ever." He lifted his hand, and the light swirling inside him expanded, showing visions in the air, visions of Earth's cities, of oceans and forests, of families holding one another through war and fire. "This is humanity," Jareth said, his voice strong. "Not perfect, not unbroken but unyielding. We suffer, but we endure, we lose, but we rise. And now, with this power, we will not be erased." The young alien's eyes widened. "For centuries we believed the cup was death. But perhaps it was waiting for one who would not surrender." The council leader shouted in desperation. "Do not listen. He is corruption. He will lead us all to ruin." But even as he spoke, doubt filled the chamber. The other council members no longer looked at him. They looked at Jareth. Jareth's voice lowered, steady and calm. "I do not ask you to kneel. I do not ask you to follow, but know this. Humanity will not bow, humanity will not vanish. We are here and we will be heard." The chamber fell silent. Even the whispers of the cup were gone. Only Jareth's words remained, heavy and unshakable. The Guardians rose to full height, their glowing eyes fixed on the human as though he were now their command. The machines quieted, their light steady, no longer wild, as if waiting for his choice. The council leader's voice finally cracked. "If one human holds this power, then the galaxy will never be the same." Jareth looked at him, his gaze sharp. "Good," he said simply, "because the galaxy needs to change." And with those words, Jareth turned away. The path ahead glowed with light, leading him deeper into the heart of the ruins. The Guardians followed, and behind him the council trembled, not only in fear of his strength but in fear of the answer he had given, the answer of humanity. A new legend, the path ahead opened like a throat of light, glowing brighter with every step Jareth took. The Guardians marched behind him, their red eyes now gold, loyal to the human who had passed the impossible test. The chamber's walls hummed, as if alive, echoing with the sound of ancient engines waking for the first time in ages. The alien council did not follow. They stood frozen in the shadows, whispering among themselves in fear. "Should we stop him?" One hissed. Another shook his head violently. "Stop him? Look at the machines, at the Guardians. They obey him, not us. He is no longer something we can control." Jareth walked steadily. His steps were not hurried, not heavy with arrogance. They were calm, each one carrying the weight of humanity. He had not lost himself to the cup. He had carried it, bent it, and proven that a human heart could hold more than even the galaxy's oldest powers. The path ended in a massive hall, wider than cities. In its center floated a structure, a crown of metal and crystal, surrounding a core of burning light. The air shook with its pulse like the heartbeat of a god. The Guardians stopped at the edge, lowering themselves to one knee, as if they too knew what this place meant. Jareth stepped onto the platform. Once visions flooded his mind. He saw fleets of alien armadas, planets burning, empires rising and collapsing into dust. He saw the cup's purpose at last. It was never a curse, never simple destruction. It was a key to the galaxy's most ancient weapon, a weapon that could shape the stars themselves. The faceless figure returned one last time, its voice, a whisper in his thoughts. You have walked further than any before you, but now comes the final choice. Take the crown and the galaxy bends to your will, but your humanity will burn away in its fire. Refuse, and all this power returns to sleep. Jareth's hands clenched. The weight of the decision pressed harder than any battle he had fought. The power was there, waiting for him. He could command armies of machines, crush empires, reshape the galaxy in the image of his will. And yet, he hesitated. He thought of Earth, not the ruined streets, not the wars, but the people, the children who still laughed, the mothers who still sang, the soldiers who fought not for glory but for each other. He thought of humanity's endless struggle, its endless rise after every fall. If he took the crown to control, he would no longer be human. He would be something else. And then humanity's answer would be lost. His voice rang out in the chamber, steady and unbroken. You want me to choose power over humanity, but I will not. I am human because I can fall, because I can bleed, because I can rise again after losing everything. That is what you will never understand. The faceless figure screamed, its voice shattering like glass. You are a fool. You throw away eternity. But Jareth only raised his head. No, I carry eternity within my humanity. He placed his hand on the crown of light. For a moment the chamber exploded with energy. The machines roared. The guardians trembled. The council cried out in terror, but Jareth did not take the crown for himself. He willed it to remember, to remain, to protect. The energy bent, not into his body but into the world around him. The great weapon did not become his throne. It became a shield that spread across the galaxy, sealing away the weapon's destructive fire but leaving its guardians awake, not as slaves to power but as protectors of balance. The chamber dimmed, the machines quieted, the visions ended, and when Jareth opened his eyes, the crown was gone. He stood alone, still human, still breathing. The cup's whispers had vanished forever. The guardians bowed deeply before him, their massive forms lowering in respect. The council watched in silence, their fear mixed with awe. One finally whispered, "He did not take the power. He chose to remain human." Another answered softly, "And in doing so he became greater than any of us." Jareth turned toward them. His eyes no longer glowed, they were simply human eyes again. But within them was a fire no alien had ever seen. A fire that promised the galaxy would never forget this moment. He spoke quietly, but his words carried through the vast hall. Humanity will not kneel, humanity will not vanish, and humanity will never be erased. Not by war, not by fear, not by power. The council lowered their heads, unable to meet his gaze. For the first time in their long history, they had been defeated not by force but by will, not by destruction, but by choice. Jareth turned away, walking back toward the path of light. The guardians followed. The ruins, once feared as a place of curses, now echoed with a new story. The story of the human who drank the cup, the human who faced gods and shadows, and the human who chose humanity above all else. When he stepped out into the alien city above, the sky split with light. The people looked up and saw the guardians marching behind him. They fell silent, their voices caught between fear and wonder. And in that silence, a legend was born. A single human had walked into the forbidden chamber. He had drunk the cup without hesitation. He had faced its curse, its trials, its power, and he had walked out still human, but more than human. He had become a symbol. The aliens whispered his name in awe and dread. The council hid their shame behind silence, and across the galaxy stories would spread of the man who proved that humanity could not be erased, and so began the legend, not of a weapon, not of a curse, but of a choice. The choice of a human who stood unbroken when even the stars trembled.